All right, this is the Sunbury Services Committee meeting for March 2nd, 2022. Can I get a roll call, please?
John Grumney.
Here.
Damon Capel.
Here.
Murray Neff.
Here.
Joe St. John.
Here. All right, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the February 2nd services meeting?
Motion.
Second. Roll call?
John Grumney.
Yes.
Damon Capel.
Yes.
Murray Neff.
Yes.
Joe St. John.
Yes.
All right. We do not have any visitors on the agenda, so we'll get right into old business. Mayor John added a whole bunch of agenda items on for us to discuss tonight. So we'll start with street sweeping. What do we need to discuss here? Or are we just talking about giving you the approval to take this to bid, Steve?
Yeah, the approval to take it to bid, and then what I'd propose is that eventually we're going, budgeting wise, that we set aside within the street department for maintenance activities, a pot of money, probably about 75,000, that we would use for sweeping, for striping. And I think it would also cover the cost of any crack filling that we do, given that we're not going to be able to, we're going to have to make a couple streets last longer. And so that's what I'd ask for. Brad and I talked about how that quote would look like for the street sweeping. He's more oriented to maybe twice a year and see how that works. Like year one, we'll do it twice. And if that's not enough, then we'll go 3. And if that's not enough, then we'll go 4, if that's acceptable.
What have we done in the past with street sweeping? I remember us discussing it, but
They have not done street sweeping in quite a while.
I don't know that we've ever done it. If we have, then it's been like project based or something out of the ordinary.
I remembered us discussing the merits of contracting it versus purchasing a street sweeper last year or the year before. So.
Yeah, the cost to purchase a street sweeper is fairly high. The cost to maintain a street sweeper is very high. I've been down that road in other communities. The wires on the brushes wear out, and that's a manual literally picking out every, you withdraw all those brushes, you put new brushes in. I've seen them fail at the suction point with the boot that kind of connects the hopper to the thing creating the suction to pull it off. So I think for us, contract sweeping is a superior way to go. He did get a quote last spring or early summer, I'm thinking, from one company, but we're gonna renew that with a little more firm amount of road miles and things like that. I told him we needed to update our road miles. It'd be every street mile would get it in one pass.
So for the sake of argument, if it's something we haven't done in a long time, why do we need to do it now?
I can say,
Water quality.
yeah, that's what I was going to focus on, the tangible benefit around stormwater, drain, clean out. I mean, we have drainage issues. I think we need to do preventative type things, like not allow additional debris to go into the storm drains. That's the tangible side of it. And then the soft benefit side is obviously the aesthetics and cleanliness of streets and things of that nature.
Yeah, the other thing that we've encountered is there's been enough organic matter to build up in the curb drains that then it's enough for plants to take root and start to either grow in the organic matter or find their way from the organic matter to a seam in the street, and that's problematic.
It's like infiltration can occur and breakage of pipes. I think it's honestly, it's like any preventative maintenance. It's like you're doing a tune-up. It's not going to cost that much per year. And the upside is that we don't have to repair, clean out as much in our stormwater system.
If you want to see the kind of buildup that occurs when you leave the meeting, look on Granville Street, or sometime when it's going to be dark, so it won't be that effective. But if you look at Granville Street, there's probably a 2 to 3 inch buildup of organic matter, grit, soils, rubber, all kinds of things that have built up along the curbs. And sometimes you get lucky and you're the street sweeper happens to coincide with the contractor that maybe lost a few nails, and you pick up some nails and maybe avoid somebody getting one of those flat tires from a nail. It's not going to be regular, and it may be a 1 in 1,000 chance, but we might catch a few nails that would end up in tires in the same process.
So how much did you say you wanted to set aside?
In total, $75,000 to do the striping renewals that we need, to do the street sweeping that we need. And we'll have those firm costs within a month or 2, month and a half. And then we're also going to arrange a time to look at the crack sealing and what needs to be done there. So the 75 may become 100 once we get all those 3 tasks kind of budgeted out. But I think that should be a fairly good pot of money to work on those 3 really fairly important tasks. Our crosswalks definitely need renewed, and we've got some center line striping that would be good too, and our curbs where we have no parking zones, and that may be more of a summer crew type of issue, and we'll just get the actual on the street markings done by a company. But
would that be the street sweeping? Would that be an annual budget item, but the other 2, the striping and the I forget the sealing, would that be just like a one-time and then as needed down the road, say in future years, or is that going to be a 75 and 100 every year?
I think we should start setting aside that money for those purposes every year. It may be that we can notch that down a little bit, but we need to have that somewhere in the budget because there's always those 3 functions need to be done. The street sweeping would be ongoing. The striping is, we'll bite off what we can, but there's always something more out there, or a crosswalk that's, we've got 2 ramps leading into it, but it hasn't been painted or something like that. So I think we can keep that activity. That's why we're at where we're at now, is because we didn't have a pot of money that Brad was comfortable doing those kind of functions with. So
I would say that sealing and sweeping are cost avoidance, 100%. I mean, you're going to get more life out of the infrastructure we own, like the existing roads. I think there's a reason that the county, the state, larger municipalities do crack sealing, and that's to get as many useful years without having roads deteriorate to where you have to replace them quicker. It's just something we haven't done. I think in the current environment, we've missed out on OPWC funding at 3 out of the past 4 years, totaling about $1.5 million missed grants. We either need to be upping our streets budget to about $1 million a year, or we need to take more manageable chunks, $25,000 a year in sealing or something, trying to get more useful life out of it. I think it's a very small investment to get longer life. I already hit on the street sweeping, and then the striping, at least in the areas I'm familiar with around here, it seems like the striping deteriorates at a faster rate than the pavement. I mean, if you think Miller Drive is a classic example where the road's in decent shape. Miller Drive in between McDonald's and UDF, so the strip behind Kroger. I mean, it's in relatively good shape, but the striping is not necessarily Granville Street by UDF. Is another one where the striping is deteriorating. I mean, those are kind of high use areas that you want to have it as clear as possible for residents or anybody coming through the area where they're supposed to be. We've got those 2 access points for Ace Hardware and UDF right off the intersection. I mean, it's very important that we, as the owners of safe streets in the area, say this is exactly where cars should be placed, so we don't get into a liable situation. That's my take on it. $75,000, I think, is an extremely prudent investment for the 3 heads. I look forward to seeing more refined numbers, but I would say this is probably a minimum investment going forward. It'll help us save
$500,000.
a lot of money going forward.
So what do you need from us tonight?
Just if you're comfortable with it, then we'll proceed to get those numbers and bring forth an appropriation ordinance to set that money aside and earmark it to those functions.
Makes sense to me. Okay.
Thanks for looking at all these, Steve.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I threw them on you at the last minute. I just, there's things we've talked about or thought about, and I appreciate you putting some thought and time into that.
Next item is robotics. I had never heard this word before this morning. So.
Some people just got shivers up their spine, like Dave Parkinson, Steve, and me.
Yeah. Well, and what's ironic is on Monday, Daryl and I were talking, or it was kind of a communication between Daryl and I and Kathy, and I called it the R word, and then it comes up. But we have completed all of the field work on it.
I don't know if these guys
What is it?
have
Okay,
an idea of what
robotics.
robotics
Okay,
is. So
10, I can't say anything in 10 seconds, 30 seconds on what robotics. Robotics is an AI-based way to do pavement conditions. And the way they do it is they use a smartphone and it's mounted on a vehicle. It's very picky in terms of the hood of the vehicle and glare and things like that. You drive the street slowly. The camera records what it sees. It uploads to, where's that at? Is it MIT? Is that where those folks are out of? So it goes to this little company that's been created in MIT called Robotics. And then AI does an assessment of your pavement conditions. It identifies, if that curb drain is cantered and maybe needs to be checked. It identifies, this has got a pothole, or here's cracks, and it does that for you. So we've done the recording part of getting all that to MIT Robotics and the AI. The AI hasn't spit back a report to us yet, and we'll follow up with them to say, you've had this we got it done last fall, so they've had it for a number of months, and asked them when we're going to get our report.
So that's interesting. So it provides the conditions of the road. Does the report provide here's some, recommended improvements, or is that up to the city to decide? They just show what the condition of the road is.
It provides, we have a pavement condition report that kind of rates the streets and what condition they're in, and what needs immediate attention, what needs midterm attention, what's in great shape and will hopefully last for another 5 years or 10 years. So it will feed into that pavement condition report.
Yeah, they don't provide recommendations. That's our job, but it does give you the hierarchy of what's the worst street down to what's the best street. The beauty of this is it's all artificial intelligence. In the old days, 3 years ago, we would send people out into the town, and we'd walk every single foot of street you have, and we would record defects, and we would input that into a spreadsheet, and we get a number. You get a number from 0 to 100. The problem is that the street you look at and you say, oh, this is 75. I look at it and I go, oh man, this is a 65, this is a piece of junk, right? And so everyone looks at it a little differently. And so what you try to do then is rate the raters and adjust then. You know, if you're always low, we're going to adjust you up, or if this guy's always high, we're going to adjust you down. And that's an art, and it never works right anyway. So you take that subjectivity out of it. And not only that, you know, when you start the project, you might look at a road and say 75, and after 2 months of doing this, you look at that same road and it's a 65. And so we get rid of all that. And that's the beauty of this. And it wasn't very expensive. In fact, even for the price that you paid for this service, it was probably half or less than half of the labor costs to do it the old fashioned way. And that was the exciting part about it. I don't know that the granularity of the results are going to give you are as fine as the work that we would have done. But I think for what you're paying for it, I think the product you're getting is probably of a higher value, and we can still use it for what we need to do. What's the worst street? Where do we need to be focusing our limited resources?
And I'll just give another lens on that. 3 or 4 years ago, we did not have a very scientific way to determine what streets we needed to improve. We all knew like our streets needed to improve. We just didn't know how that, in what order, what the cost was. You know, when we were saying, you know, repair Kintner Drive, we didn't know if that was $1 million, $1.5 million. So council authorized CT to go out and do a complete paving condition report. I mean, it was basically the first time that we had done a comprehensive every single street. And so what came out of that was a CIP, or capital improvement plan, to say, here's the useful life left on this street. Here's a potential schedule, you know, it takes 16 years or 26 years, I can't remember, that we were going to replace all the streets. And it starts getting you in the mindset of, okay, what is this actually going to cost? Now, the cost of CT to do that up front was expensive. I think that's why, you know, Tommy, you know, previously had, and Alan had really engaged, like, hey, we can't do a paving condition report every single year, but there's value to having the data every single year. So this was an alternative to having 2 or 3 people go out and grade the graders, you know, kind of take the average rating of everybody. All I'll say is this is kind of a natural progression of how we've gotten to this point. I'll determine whether it's a good solution or not if once we see the reporting. That's the part that I'm interested in. What the hell are we getting for what we pay? Because it's taken 1.5 years to, you know, put cell phones on and swap them out with Android devices and Apple, and we don't have any reporting. So we're paying for something and we don't have anything yet. That's my gripe right now. But long term, hopefully it works out. Potentially it could be we do the robotics, you know, every year, and we have CT do you know, the full PCR every 2 or 3 years or something, you know, to kind of line up. Does this make sense or not?
Sure. Makes sense.
But thanks for the update. I'm glad we got the services committee up to speed on what that is.
Yeah, that's neat. I
Should
definitely
be
want to
good.
see the reporting when it comes in.
Me too.
I'm curious about that. All right. On to new business, 2022 street program.
Do we defer this to next meeting in terms of a discuss? We are going to discuss it this evening. All right, let's dive in.
I spent the last 2 hours before the parks meeting making up a bunch of stuff, and so I thought I'd like to.
Well, I hate to rob you of the opportunity then.
See what sticks tonight.
So right after lunch, Steve and I were able to get together and discuss a few of the key parameters that are involved in our developing a 2022 street program for you. The first most important question is what's the budget? So the budget's $400,000. The second question was, does that include the inspection, or is inspection separate from that? And the answer was that inspection is separate from that. So we're going to target $400,000 as the construction cost for the 2022 street program. We always have a contingency in our projects. We typically do 10%, but given where we are this year, we're going to use 5%. So when you take 5% out of the 400, that gets you about $380,000. So our target is $380,000 of construction improvements for the 2022 street program. I asked about brick streets. Normally, we have $50,000 for brick street repairs. Given the resources, we're going to defer brick street repairs to a later year. Same thing with concrete repairs and storm inlet repairs. We'll defer those to later days. Steve and I talked at great length about crack sealing, pavement marking, and so I was almost chuckled when I saw your old business because that's exactly what we talked about today as well. It makes a lot of sense moving crack sealing and pavement marking to more of a maintenance activity as opposed to a capital improvements activity. Certainly capital improvements will have these elements within them. If we take up a street that has marking, we got to put the markings back, and we would do that as part of the capital improvements. But for just general updates and upgrades to our existing pavement markings, it makes sense to have a contract that's outside of our street program. So then it got down to the brass tacks of, well, what can we do for 380? And the highest priority seems to be Kentner Parkway. We've beaten it up pretty badly with all the construction that's gone on at the high school. And I'm sure that the pavement condition ratings that we have for it that are predate the high school work and all the other work, the Newman work and everything else that's going on up there. And they weren't that great to begin with. So the Kentner Parkway project is, do I lose it? Classes. I think we estimate that at about $258,000 to do Kentner Parkway. And then, so we looked at what's next. The administrator thinks that maybe South Columbus / Old 3C could use some work, especially from south of Barleycorn down toward the Bewee driveway. That section is probably the worst of it, and I believe it is the worst of it. And if we did that road, we would add, I've got it, I'm not lost. About maybe $80,000. So that gets us out somewhere in the $340,000 range. Our target was $380,000. If we wanted to add in another small road, we could, to get from $340,000 to $380,000, we could do that. Excuse me. Hill Road is a poor quality road. It rated at 57, which is, I think it's just better than poor. It would cost about $26,000 to, if we wanted to add Hill Road. There are other roads that little sections of roads we could do, but those are the worst of the worst. We did not talk about, we being the administrator and I did not talk about doing any work to Walnut Street. There has been some interest in Walnut Street, but that's a hard road to do. And if we wanted to do Walnut from, say, Laurel down to Granville, that would easily be north of $100,000. So unless there was a little section of Walnut that needed to be done or wanted to be done, we might do that in lieu of Hill.
That's your question on Walnut, since we've had a couple residents in here talking about that. Can we do maybe something shy of, short sections of mill and fill, no micro sealing or anything, but just pothole repair? I mean, that's what I'm thinking.
I think Brad's been out to do pothole repair.
Like cold patch stuff, or
probably cold patch.
That's what I think too. So maybe we can,
in the summer, we can get some hot patch.
Yeah.
There's one curb, or well, it's not a curb, it's a drop off that's kind of collapsing out. That would be a kind of a tricky thing to.
But I'm looking for comprehensive, just so hard. I mean, it's pretty significant back there. There's a couple of potholes that I would say need some work.
On these old roads like this, when you start seeing potholes, especially, and the edge of the road caving off, that's a base failure.
Right.
And that doesn't get fixed by throwing some hot patch in and steamrolling over it. You got to dig it down to the bottom and just build it all up from the beginning. The real answer is at some point in the future is a complete reconstruction. And there's it's called FDR, it's full depth reclamation. And you come in literally with a big giant grinder. Instead of milling off 3 inches, you grind the whole damn thing all the way down to the base. The asphalt, the base, it all gets ground up, mixed up. You level it off, you roll it out, and then you pave on top of that. That's your new base material. And then you put 3 inches of asphalt on top of it. That's expensive, but it's not a wide road, so it wouldn't be it wouldn't break the bank to do that. And the question is whether that road really needs something like that, or can we find a way to mill and fill? Can we put down some fabric maybe? Can we do some full depth replacement where the base is obviously gone? That's not what I'm talking about for this year. I'm just talking about if you're looking to spend 40,000 more to get to the target of 380, if that's an important goal to you, then maybe rather than do a hill road or something like that, we could do some portion or portions of Walnut, because it has been discussed, but it's just a hard road to do. Something we really haven't talked about. There are sections of Walnut that are not in Sunbury, they're completely in Trenton Township. Right. And there are sections of Walnut that are half in Trenton Township and half in Sunbury. And so, the question is, Trenton's never going to do it. Right. They're probably watching on TV, but I'm pretty comfortable in saying that Trenton's not going to spend a nickel on that road. And so are we going to? And then, so those are bigger questions for another day, perhaps. So that's what we kind of came to as probably our 2020 street program. And by the way, we don't have to spend 380 if we're comfortable just doing South Columbus and Kentner and stopping there today. That money will still be there next year. If we don't spend it this year, it'll be there next year for you. Kathy, it'll be there next year if you don't spend it this year, right? So, we can lump it in with next year's budget and have that money available then.
Mr. Parkinson, can I ask a question just to connect the dots? So how does that $400,000 budget tie into the robotics?
It doesn't.
It doesn't. Okay, so when that analysis comes back, and it tells us the condition of the roads, that has nothing to do with the prioritization that you just talked about. And
well, it does in a sense. So robotics told us what robotics is going to tell us what our worst road is and what our best road is. And typically you focus on your worst, and then those then become your best, right? And so you just keep pairing off the top of the list, and it all moves. So what we've been doing is the PCR pavement condition ratings that we prepared for you 3 years ago. And so that's where these roads come from. These are, we wiped off the worst in 2020, and we wiped off the next section in 2021. And now we're down to roads that are in the 40s, 50s, and starting to get into the 60s.
So this is going off a previous report. So it's the same philosophy of the robotics, but we're just using the older report.
Yes. And what will happen when you get your robotics is we're going to take their numbers and we're going to plug them into our spreadsheet. We're going to keep our numbers, and we'll put a new column for the robotics. I'm curious to see how this all comes out. And then we'll start using the robotics numbers to rank, if you will, the streets.
Thank you. I connected the dots. I appreciate it.
And in case you're new and haven't come across this, the 400 is a number that the finance director indicated is available in the budget. We get money from
the street fund. That is your gas tax and your permissive tax that you get each year.
There you go. So
I did have a question about that. So in previous years, I know we've looked at, I'll just say this, there's different components of doing these improvements, like design, bid, inspect, construct. We're talking primarily about construction tonight, right? $380,000 in construction expense. What is the cost for the other three elements estimated, either in terms of percentage, or is it going to add another $100,000 into my 380 imaginary number I've got in my mind?
I believe you've already authorized the design work for us, and I forget the number, 40, 42. Do you recall?
40's close enough.
But that included the bidding, and anytime you bid a project, regardless of how expensive the project itself is, it's $6,000. And the fact that we are now only doing a $400,000 job is that we won't spend all 40, so you won't get a bill for all 42,000. I'm pretty comfortable saying that. The inspection fees depend on what you ask your inspectors to do for you. Typically 6 to 8% is a fair price for inspection.
Say 6%.
6 to 8.
Okay.
And as you get smaller projects, the inspection fees get higher, but it's really driven by how long are they going to be on site and what are you asking your inspectors to do. One of the beauties of our street programs is that they come in, they get their work done, and they go home. And so it doesn't take a lot of time. There's not a lot of staging. There's not a lot of earth work to do. It's got they come in, they start milling, and they start filling, and they're in and out. So 8% is probably on the high end for something like this. But if you start asking them to do all kinds of things like change orders and other types of processing of payment applications and closeout documents and things like that, that adds a little bit to it, but not a great deal.
The reason I asked that question is because the first year we were doing streets program, probably even the second year, I was kind of caught off guard with, okay, what are we actually paying for? What are the different cost components? And I always felt like I didn't have a good grasp on how much money are we paying for this whole entire program? And to sum it all up, what I'm hearing is we're in the $445,000 investment range. 380 of it is going towards actually constructing the roads. So in terms of if you get asked by community members or talking points, I think that's a good number to put in the back of your mind. I also think that we skimmed over some key details here, and that is that I think Steve, Kathy, Dave had these conversations. This is really, we're taking their guidance, but this is also a services committee discussion. This is also a council authorization of funds. So if you feel one way or another, like this is too strong of an investment in a high demand inflationary period, or if you feel like, hey, listen, we're getting further behind because our plan is $1 million a year, and we're investing $445,000, we're just adding on, another year onto the plan. What we've done in the past is looked at kind of over investing or trying to hit some middle ground between what $1 million is and what our budgeted amount is, and coming up with other ways to fund it. Kathy doesn't like it that much because it'll just always shows it like in the red in a certain category, but you have to answer the questions to the residents to say, why are there potholes in my road? Why is my storm drain caving in on my street? Things like that. The brick repair is the one that stood out to me. Foregoing brick repair in like the heart of the square right here. Like this is the street that I always come through, and I'm like, you know what? Before I get out of this role, like I'm just going to redo this entire street and get it completely flat, and then walk away, drop the mic. But that is an expensive repair to do. It's expensive to maintain, but it will get exponentially more expensive if you don't do anything. I promise you that. So,
And
go ahead, Steve.
my advice would be, if we've got that kind of targeted gap between in construction of 340 and we're hoping to get to 380, that does give us some money to do that. I would prioritize that before going to some of these smaller streets.
I agree.
So before Hill, you said?
Yeah.
I mean, Hill is the street
Hill's
that's
not-
right by the intermediate school, right? It's not even 100 yards long. It's got to be 40 yards.
It's the portion of Hill on the north side of Letts.
On the north side, that's like, I won't even go there. There's not very much traffic that's going to go on that. I wouldn't even consider it a street. It's close to a private drive. On record, I'm saying that. You can say it or not. It's compared to Brick Street repair, that is literally the most trafficked area in town.
And none of us here are arguing with you. And and that's why I appreciate that you said that. That's why we're here tonight. We're here to get feedback on where we should be focusing our attention and focusing our limited resources.
So is a brick road that's in need of repair going to compound in expense faster than a paved road? that's in need of repair if we ignore the paved road?
So many questions for an engineer to answer.
No. I don't. Or I could tell you that it's the universal answer. It depends.
So
I
I think for me then, the major factor is that this is right here on the square then, and that would be the,
And there is one dip that Brad's identified that he wants to investigate because he's not sure if it's a base issue
Yeah.
or if there's something below the base that, if we've got a pipe run going across there or something that's.
It's been pretty dramatic of a change in the past, I would say 2 months, the one I think you're talking about.
Yeah.
I've seen it. And that was the one where I'm like, okay, we need to just kind of, because did we do some repair here last year on the
Yeah,
street?
every year we do a little, we did do some here.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We
And the crosswalk.
we budgeted 50,000 for the last 4 or 5 years.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And this isn't the only brick street. I mean, there's other brick streets that, primarily on the north side of the square that run east to west primarily. But this is obviously like a very highly trafficked Granville Street. Part of what I would say is like kind of the charm of the square.
If you'd like, we can put brick streets all around.
so what do we need to do tonight? Is this something that we need to get ready to take to council?
Can I say one more thing? There is a timing component to this. I've said this probably for the past couple of years. It's going to sound really old, but we need to get these improvements done before the school year opens up. So August is a deadline. There are some, last year our streets program ran into November. And I'm always of the thought of why do crack sealers and driveway sealers stop doing asphalt repair on your driveways? It's because like the cold conditions, humidity levels, all that I've taken into account tends to have the longest term impact if you do it in the hottest months of the year and get out of the way of the schools and buses and everybody else. With that said, do we need to take action tonight to hit the no later than August deliverable for our streets program?
If not tonight, then 2 weeks.
I feel like I've got enough to go on for an approval tonight, but I know this may feel like new information or we haven't covered this in great detail. Damon, you're probably a lot more familiar with this than.
I think it makes sense to focus on the two major streets and then the brick repairs.
Can we get Kent
have any
out of the
problem
section
with
of
that.
Columbus and the brick repair for under $350? The section of Columbus that I think Brad is concerned about that goes across from Barleycorn primarily.
I think it'll be cutting it close. It might be more like 360.
Yeah, if we don't do everything that you had described to me, we can peel,
Well, if we didn't.
we can peel 30 off.
Kenner's 250.
58
Yeah,
Okay.
and Columbus Street, you said 80.
I got about 80,000.
So there's 338, 340. So if you put 20,000.
Well, if we didn't do 953 feet of Columbus, if we didn't go as far as you had
Okay.
described, and we just did something, if we did half of that, we would free up $40,000
That's what I was
almost.
kind of thinking about.
And if we don't
Taking
do,
a more targeted
and if we
approach
only-
to Columbus Street.
and if we only do 20,000 of brick repair or 25, just to isolate on that one area, I think we can get it to the 350 budget.
That still keeps us within our contingency amount and I know I'm doing a lot of this math in my head, but like the feeling is more what I'm going off of, like the feeling of Kidder has to get done. Columbus Street, there's sections that need to get done in the brick repair. I think that's explainable to residents, given that we don't have $1 million to spend this year. We're trying to stretch every dollar in our streets budget as far as we can.
I do like the idea of not tiptoeing right up to your maximum tolerable line.
Yeah.
These are my best efforts to give you what I think the costs are going to be, but this bidding climate is crazy and costs seem to go up every month. And if we wait too long, who knows what the bidders are going to be worried about and what they're going to ask for compensation.
You have any questions? I'm sorry.
No, I think it's pretty well laid out. Makes sense.
John, do you have any comments or questions? Damon, do you feel good about what we're talking about here? I do too.
Yeah, as good as I can with the budget we have.
Right.
All right, so I guess to reiterate, what do we need to do tonight then?
Do we need to authorize you to
Well,
go to bid?
actually, no, there's no action there's no formal action that is required. If you would like to take one, that's fine. But all I need to know, I'll let Steve speak for himself. All I need to know is I'm moving in the right direction so that when I put a bid package together and I come to council and say, here, I'd like permission to bid this. I don't get strung up and, what were you smoking when you thought that this was a good idea? So that's all we're looking for, to know that we're moving in the right direction, in the direction that you want us to move.
I appreciate the three of you meeting ahead of time, coming up with a plan with a constricted budget, and I definitely support what we talked about tonight.
Yep, I agree. We have 15 minutes left, so I want to touch on some of these other topics real quick. Parking Middleview Avenue. This, I don't know.
Just let you know, I got a call from a resident over there. The complaint was about people parking on both sides of Middleview Avenue. So when I looked it up on the ordinance, it says no parking at all on Middleview Avenue. And so I informed her of that, and she said, well, it's never been that way. So just coming attractions, we need to look at our parking ordinance in the areas we have no parking designated and bring that up to date.
So we have no signage in the area, or
We do have signage on one side that says no parking, and the other side is open for parking right now. So, and that may be fine. It's just different than the ordinance. And so that revealed what I think is reality check of going through that ordinance, identifying if what the reality out there matches the ordinance, and if there's any other areas that we need to take a look at. So that was a 3-minute-er.
yeah, that was good. Can you be as concise on Miller Drive flooding?
I can, to some degree. When I pulled out our paper maps of that thing, it was weird. I could not find where, there was a curb drain on one side, a curb drain on the other. But it didn't show it going anywhere. I would think logically it's probably heading to Kroger, although that big pond, although I can't guarantee that. So it's going to need more investigation. One, to see if it actually does go somewhere to daylight. And then if it does go to daylight, is there something wrong with the pipe, or is the level control at Kroger such that our pipe's underneath the surface of the water? So when it hits a certain point, it's pushing against a much larger body of water and it backs up. But I do agree there is a problem in that area that needs to be studied. And
Very busy road, and
yeah, and
that
Brad and I
floods a couple times a year at least.
Yeah, I mean, he knows that's one of the areas he needs to throw out the, beware of the flooded roadway signs when we get a heavy rain. So it does need addressed, and I'll start at the Brad and I level of investigation and see if we can make sense of the map that we have and if it's the reality. And then we'll proceed on to getting engineering expertise.
Where is that, Steve?
Where Miller kind of dips, like you know, where the side entrance of Kroger is to Miller,
Mhm.
and there's a bank in that retirement, or
It's across from the retirement
Across Main
facility, in
Street.
between the apartment
There's a
and,
little belly to Miller right there.
Okay.
there's a storm drain. It seems like it would lead to the detention pond behind Kroger. That's where it would logically say it's going downhill, but I'm gonna check the GIS.
Well, I don't trust the GIS because that was put together with who knows what. I'll check our record plans that we have in our directories for that. It's not entirely, I'm not entirely comfortable thinking it goes to Kroger's because Kroger's detention basin would be for Kroger.
Kroger's, yeah.
It wouldn't be for the street runoff. So I'll take a look and see what I can find on our stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good camering and LS fails back truck.
Well, the camera is your last great resort. It costs a little bit of money, but if you run out of ideas, yes, and call the guy that does all your camera work and have him send something.
And then back truck, and we'll have a field trip out there. Services committee. Turn that thing on high blast.
And then the next item was actually sewer GIS mapping and capacity analysis.
That was an added.
That was me.
Yes, that was.
We need to, I'll put it this way. We need to know where sewers are and the capacity levels that they're at. We often have developers come in and say, hey, how much sewer capacity do you have? And we say, we don't know. We may not even know the line size in some cases. And we need to know that information because there's major forks in the road or branches off of the sewer system. All roads lead to the wastewater treatment plant. But we need to start making investments in where we're expanding. And we need to be able to say we're at 80%, 90%, something before we have backups that go into people's houses or anything else. I talked to Mr. Parkinson about this, asking if we have anything. We don't.
No, and we're working on that. I've had a series of meetings with our GIS department, and they've had a series of questions. I have one for you tonight, and then we'll have more later. But before I get there, there was a comment tonight about do we know where our benches are? If you invest in this sanitary sewer GIS, it serves as your platform for every other GIS you want to do in the city. You could have a park bench GIS layer that showed where every park bench was and when it was bought and what it's made of and what, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just going out and finding it and putting it in and populating all the attributes. So, Mr. Mayor, the question for tonight is, in the GIS, do you want it to be an internal GIS where only people of the city can access it? Or do you want it to be an external GIS where everyone in the world can access it?
I want what the county has available to them. I can go out and see anywhere that the county has their sewer lines.
Yeah, okay.
But I assume they also have information behind the scenes that we cannot see.
That's right.
So let's put it to you that way. I want both. I want there to be information that's available to the public. I also want our internal plans in terms of, let's say, expansion, problem areas, infiltration areas, stuff that we would really need to focus on to be able to have that access to that.
All right, I'll take that back to the men and women in our department. But that's probably going to lead to the next question at some point in time, which is, what do you want the public to actually be able to see? So I don't need that answer today, but
they need to know sizes and things like that. I think they need to know directionally, is there a sewer line in my backyard?
Okay.
Is there, does it cross the street here? That would be, I think, sufficient. Similar to what we have for our stormwater GIS on the auditor's site.
Yeah.
Or similar to what the county would have for their wastewater treatment.
Yeah, this will be far more robust because this will be far more emphasis on the I part of GIS, which are all the attributes that go behind it. Okay, well, we'll continue to work on that proposal for you. We'll have it shortly.
Sounds Sounds good.
I had a separate item for street sealing. I imagine, is that just part of,
Yeah, we
Yeah.
covered that.
nothing separate there for it? All right, then do we have anything for the good of the order? Good group? All right, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Roll?
John Grumney,
Yes.
Damon Capel.
Yes.
Murray Neff,
Yes.
Joe St. John.
Yes.
Thank you.
Did they do minutes?
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
I was not paying them